님 아니 그러나 저도 그렇잖아. 집에 눈이 문제지. 집안에 수수지. 집에 수수지 눈이 문제지. 눈이 감되네. 이내는 또 눈이 수수지 눈이 너무 많아서 이내야 좀 눈이 줄을 까먹고 눈이 줄을 잡고 레스터 잡아가지고. 그래서 랑이 왜 늦으면 그래서 내가 눈이 줄을 잡아다 늦어와서 아니 랑이 네가 집이 아니 네가 좀 그랬어. 랑이 입에 뒤에 안 쓰셔도 돼. 네가 이제 가서 늦을 봐서 이제라서 이제라 되고 지시 제가 소소가 말하는 거 동의도 뭐하디 가르치는 저 한번 소소 비싸시베 아니 내게마다 잡아지는 소소가 나가서 눈에 용어를 눈에 용어야 되잖아. 이 신발은 주주의 용어였어. 이제라 되고 지시잖아. 이제라 가면서 공평한 가래 나가서 지도 나서
So good afternoon everyone. We begin again at verse 45, right? So here we have the outlining the fault of having craved the causes of suffering in previous lives. So the verse reads, "It is the fault of the childish that they are hurt, for although they do not wish to suffer, they are greatly attached to its causes. So why should they be angry with others?" So we're talking here about ourselves, for example, that the causes for our suffering, the attachment that we have, is not just coming from this life, but rather is a habit that we have in our mental continuum from many previous lifetimes, right? That we have all these very strong habits of attachment and anger and so on and so forth. So then all of us who are like childish, right? So technically speaking, it means someone who is into Arya, but it just means ordinary beings, so like ourselves. So we do not wish to suffer. But nevertheless, we are really very much attached to the causes of suffering, right? So, being very much attached to the causes of this suffering, and so we have this strong habit, again, coming from previous lives, where we ourselves engaged in various non-virtuous actions that are the causes of suffering, and such that now when we are experiencing the results of those, various types of suffering arising, then we shouldn't really point the fingers at others, right? But rather it is simply the results of our own previous actions. So rather than getting angry at others for creating our suffering, we should really kind of see that this is the result of us having creating the causes for that very suffering that we are experiencing.
시설이가 요 전예창이 용의 용고를 이내야 파일라지 마베기 챙기지 무시오이나 이 수미도 용 가만히 있으면 내로 땅사고 소리 간신은 알아서 수게 내사와서 매난 주 내가 너무 용고다야 아버지가 내가 전예창이 용거는 나는 가지고 그거사예요 그래서 이내야 용고에 이내 용고에 파일라지 마사기 체도 이 수셔들이 감마도다 이 차우스에는 되게 말했어. 내가 좀 그랬어. 근데 이제 아니 스마다 아니 레트로면 나서는 신나지서 당선 뉴욕에 아니 가서 그냥 뉴욕에 제도 아니 레트로면 나서는 신도로 지요. 근데 아니 신도들이 가서 그냥 소소리 지금 소소리 착바제사기 미로리에 가나 계단 해야 되고 신도들에 되어요. 시마레도 레트로면 뜻가라서 레트로면 뜻가 신나도 배 제노보다 소소소보다 수려다 되게가 아마 세타스 이 문에 그게 두고요 말에 아니면 좀 대판이 아니 라식이 너무 오래 있다니 자 아니 랑기 있어 레지 되지바 제가 소소비 아니 내고만 내주자 싸워요 이거라 된 아니 되게 가서 요즘 세기 무색이 거의 지에서 가시다니 초르스 아니 그런데 왜 이게 들으면 나서다 그가 제가 많이 들었어. 자, 제가 소소를 내사하는 용어를.
So then the next verse gives us kind of an example of this, where it says, just like the guardians of the hell worlds and the forest of razor-sharp leaves, so is this produced by my actions. So with whom should I be angry? Right? So from the Buddhist perspective, we would say that when you pass away, there are certain other realms that we can be reborn in, such as the hell realms, and the hot hells and cold hells and all sorts of things. And then within those realms, it is often described as there are various kind of hell guardians who put us in a burning house and do sorts of horrible things. But it's not that these are actually sentient beings. It's not that they're actually beings, but they're just kind of projections of our own mind or of our own karma. And it's simply that due to having engaged in particular actions, we take rebirth in these places and experience that various types of suffering. So then again, with this thing of the forest of very sharp leaves, it's kind of a place where there are these trees, and at the top of the trees you have someone that you're attached to, or someone that you really like, and they're calling to you, but actually you climb the tree and it's very sharp and it cuts you and all sorts of wounds and things like that. But again, it's all of this is not something external that we can get angry with. It's just something that is created by our own mind due to these types of various actions. So likewise, since all of these types, this is the example, right? But then if you mean that all of the suffering that we experience is really just a creation of our own negative actions, and really there's no one to be angry with outside of ourselves. So then the next verse is kind of telling us almost the opposite way around to think about it, in the sense that it says, having been compelled by my karma, those that harm me come into existence. If that throws them into the lower realms, have I not brought them to ruin? Right? So again, thinking kind of in the opposite way, the other way around, that actually, since it is our own negative karma that brings about our suffering, then we can say that it is due to all these various harms that we brought upon others that then creates this relationship whereby they then come back as our enemies and those that harm us and creating the suffering for us. So in one sense, we can think about it as our own karma kind of compelling them or impelling them to engage in various sorts of harm towards us. And so, but then one way to think about it is then they are acting harmfully towards us, and then they are engaging in negative actions which will lead them to the hell realms and so forth. So actually, through our own actions, haven't we actually harmed them rather than them harming us? Because they're the ones that will be going to the hell realms. So in that way, it's kind of a different way to think about it. Right, so it's kind of the opposite in the sense that, So we do something, and then there's some kind of karmic relationship there that means that the other person then gets angry at us. And we said that even just getting angry is creating so much negativity for that person. And so they are kind of going to end up having to experience those things. So in one way to look at it is that we have harmed that person rather than they have harmed us. Right? So then the next two verses continue this line of thinking, saying that in dependence on them, I purify much karma through patience. As in dependence on me, they will be thrown for a long time into the hell. I give them harm and they give me benefit. So why, O terrible mind, are you mistakenly angry? Right? So we can think about the person, for example, someone coming along and saying some harsh words towards us, right? Or they're very angry and continually kind of insulting us or whatever. So at that time, that person is kind of our object for the practice of our patience, right? So that's the person that we're trying to practice patience with respect to. And so in that kind of scenario, since we are getting the opportunity to practice patience, right? We're actually, if we're able to do so, we're accumulating virtue. We have a great opportunity to practice. But for the other person, they're really angry and they're shouting at us. So actually for them, they're accumulating non-virtue. Right? So for us, it's a really incredible opportunity. It's a real kindness, but actually for them, it's something that is quite harmful, and they will have to suffer for that as a result. So rather than seeing it as oh, they're such a horrible person and I'm great, we see like actually they are really benefiting me, and I am actually in a way harming them. So trying to switch that and think like it seems really unsuitable, or really strange then to get angry towards this person.
And was the pen rojid, the tea, the papa, and the same of the temple over the yellow. Did the good, such in the good. The papa, Chisholm Day, Kid is a dollar. Somebody is a kid dollar to the society. Somebody got it. Dollar, I mean, the pen up in terms of sometimes or happy the pen to work on somebody you in somebody you in any daily that all finding they got it. She said, now I like to show and be I care about the people and get your side of the little sign sometime. And then Zuna, and the day is only a put on you're a good child because I'm not there. The Kumura, Penny, not the water bomb, has it because I'm such a man. The could you're a good daughter and couldn't do that. I guess you need to go home and my generation, Joanna. Crying, I mean, yeah, by the children of which I did go from outside, telling him my letter, charge as go home, and you're a sort of go away.
So then we have some kind of debates to that kind of idea, right? It's not a comfortable idea. So the first is to think that, well, maybe it isn't correct. It's not really correct that they're benefiting us, right? That person's not really benefiting us. So it says, if I have a good quality of mind, I will not go to the hells, right? So it really depends upon our way of thinking at that time, whether they are benefiting us or not. So if we're able to maintain level-headedness and have this sort of thinking about practicing patience, thinking about accumulating virtue, and so on and so forth, then it really becomes an opportunity to practice, right? So it really depends upon the motivation. Yeah? So it's not really thinking, oh, they're going to go to hell or something like that, but rather thinking about our own opportunity to practice through this, then we won't kind of be drawn to getting angry than ourselves creating our own virtue, but rather it becomes an opportunity to practice patience simply in respect of that. So the idea is that we're refuting these kind of objections, right? So we have these kind of objections to this idea of this person being a benefit to us. So at first we're looking at the idea that the person is actually benefiting us, and objection to that, and refuting that objection, right? It's a bit tough to do that in your mind, but it's thinking that actually they are benefiting us and thinking why. And the next part is talking about, though I'm protecting myself, how will it be for them, right? So through our practice of patience, we're able to protect ourselves from engaging in various non-virtue, but for them, since they are, in order to become the object of our patience, they're engaging in all this non-virtue, and for them it's not going to turn out so well, actually. So, we should think kindly to them then finally, thinking in this last verse, it says, however, should I return the harm, it will not protect them either. My conduct will deteriorate, and thus my fortitude will be destroyed. So then, but again, what's the alternative, right? If they say something nice to us, and we just decide, okay, we're going to reply in a nasty way as well, and we're going to get into a fight, and again, that's not going to benefit anyone, right? So. And actually, it's going to create our own conduct. So when we're saying conduct, it's talking about a practice of bodhicitta, a practice of compassion, or any kind of virtue that we are engaging in. So if we just think like this as well, they're not benefiting me really, and we just decide, well, so it's better to respond in kind, right? Then no one wins in a way, right? It harms both people.
Anna tumdi nunnery ki che mai gandara ta ke jian nunnery ki che du ba na ji kulong de ya ji chen sen da de chang ning je ke che pha ju de ya chang ning ji kulong de ki che nunnery ki che ju de
chang ning ji ki che nunnery je re
같이 누나야 고개를 우리 상담에서 벤처는 미직 교보 공이에요. 저 미직 교육이에요. 저 단도나 보이는 거죠. 아래 단유경이 디더비오 가지고 가지고 보험이 됐던 말씀. 보험이 된다 펜도 쉬워로 그렇게 해서 쉬워 파르되지. 뉴경이 디파저 상담도 고개를 문하고 뉴경이 디파저 녀 띵나 자루로 그러죠. 또 어디 통리 닝지시 연탁을 걸어는 뉴게 생이 가셔도 선지고 가셔는 고디 양게 지마라 양게 맞는 내고 저 거리니 심어지 지에 어딘지 고른 지시냐 지고는 장미긴 연료된 게 지에
니레지에라 니레는 저기요 진짜 대진 말 대변 지지진에 이거 지난게 가서 미세와 미세와 이제 이거로 되게 소지가 있는 수요는 거에 이거 이내 나가 대변 지지진은 이거 대변은 주당 시벌을 이거 그런 그러나 코란이 주당 이거들이가 지나오고 니가제 지저리 봐 로지도 거기가 근데 이제 아니 이 나오라 주 나오라 난 누구지는 지르 코란이 미창세 여봐요 그래서 근데 이제 다 되면 이지진이 가로 주당이 하고 딱 주당이 하고 다 기시 코란 주당을 난 누구지 상세와 이나 주나 니가제 상세와 그래서 그때 딱 다니는 손배도 그렇게 하고 녀도 누나에게 아니 인가요 봐. 진짜 인사는 이거서 기분이 좋다 문제도 되는데 이민나 누르지 글쎄. 그러니까 고는 가래는 지난 김씨를 이바서 제거해서 녀도 고해가지고 이렇게 딱 가라상 고는 장마신 딱 거기 계시 참새를 그때 거기 녀의 방상에 다가고 저는 민용고 살아서냐 고는 지 글쎄. 남나도 생이 나오고 해주는 가셔도 그거는 요. 아, 근데 위치 소재에 지나서 세고에 되는 거로 라 같이 다시 가지고 이거 설치고 사서서는 내가 먼저 가져도 같이 안에 맞는 시시당 거에 무슨 시시당에 내가 나기 부재에 야구 말아 이내야 그 들에 도지 자살을 했냐 이거는 저 왜.
So the question is about, but if we just let the person continue doing what they're doing, then they're just going to continue creating negativities for themselves, right? So shouldn't we kind of step in and stop them from doing that? And so, but then in response to not replying in kind, kind of thing, so we should reply in kind. So then, the answer is that there's a time and place for that, right? So it really depends on one's motivation and how one engages in that action. So there is a famous story from the previous lives of the Buddha, where he was on a ship and there were 500 merchants on the ship, and then he found out that one particular person was planning to kill everyone. And so he thought, if this person really is going to kill everyone, he's going to spend many, many lifetimes in the hell realms and he's going to undergo so much suffering. So I'm going to prevent him from killing everyone by killing him, basically, right? So by killing the one person, not only was he able to save the other 499, but he also prevented that person from engaging in the action of killing that would have created a lot of suffering for the killer, right? And likewise, we have other times when we can affect people by way of graphical expression or telling them off. So sometimes these kind of activities do help for people's behavior not to deteriorate. But there's kind of a time and place for that, and it mainly depends upon the motivation.
뭐 장마스 무치더라. 이게 우드가 동네다 바자야. 지야 보대 말에 이네 군문장에 구멍 왜 아버지 잡으시는 거 우리 아버지다. 그러니 디바마사 아버지 잡으시는 거야. 이제 누가 해줘요.
For example, parents, if the kid is doing something negative or it's got some kind of is doing something wrong, then they're thinking, okay, if they continue doing this in the future, they'll develop this habit and it's going to kind of carry on into their adulthood. Then they will take some kind of way to discipline the kid, right? And so they're not disciplining them to kind of harm the kid, but to help. So then it leads us to the next section, which is talking about being patient with disrespect and so forth. So the first point of criticism, blame and so forth, do not harm my body, right? So the root verse is saying, since my mind is not physical, in no way can anyone destroy it. Due to strong attachment to the body, it is harmed by various suffering. Since disrespect, harsh speech and unpleasant words will not harm my body, why mind do you become so angry? Right? So again, when we think about things like harsh words being said to us, right, then our mind not being physical, right, then it cannot in any way be harmed by others. And yet when the harsh words are spoken to us, why do we get so angry about it? Why do we let the mind kind of be harmed or hurt by it and thereby get angry? Right? So it's saying that really it's mainly due to the strong attachment to the body and so forth that we kind of allowing that to become, so due to this strong attachment to the body, we allow ourselves to become angry and get hurt by all of these various things. But if we really think about it, then things like disrespect and harsh speech, these unpleasant words and so forth, they cannot harm the mind, right? They cannot touch the mind, being physical. And so in no way can they harm the mind, so why do we let the mind get hurt by them?
직주고 나요. 와. 짝짝처럼 먹지. 뭐지? 나를 보이도. 와. 이내야 이나들 스스로 마신 어서 가진 바이를 라치 미녀바지 거기 sembrare 냐고. 와. 야니 단도 가서 이게 다 라바다라 이제 냐도 되게 많다. 이마에 되지. 다리에 들어가서 뭐가 이렇게 많다. 뒤에서 가는 시죠. 와. 같이 좀 거다가 자장이야. 제가 봐 시야라 갈라와 자장이라. 내는 얘들 땅 가서 가네요. 근데 가서 내려냐? 아무튼 어디가 상담 소소야. 남도야 많다. 와. 근데 땅이 가서 쓰면 진짜 보면 미카시 아래는 그냥 가서 나쁘지 나와니까. 같은 사람 만나가 이게 코너 아니면 제가만 나한테 가서 그만에 아니지 나서는 같이 가야 근데 뭐 제가 좀 많이 와야 그러니까 저는 특히 뭐래요 말이 얘기 말하는 사람 때문에 말할 수 있다.
And so we can think that actually in general, for us it's not generally, we don't generally face issues with people hitting us, right? It's kind of very rare that we are victims of kind of physical violence. It's something a bit rare. So that might not be our main opportunity for practicing patience, but rather on a more regular basis, it might be dealing with harsh words or criticism or people kind of talking down to us and things like that. So it's mainly on the basis of words that we tend to face kind of difficulties, right? It's much more common for us. But if we really were to think about it properly, then these words are just sounds, right? They're just sounds that are being uttered. And really what happens is that we hear them and then we kind of hold on to them in the mind. And then the thinking starts, right? Then we start, that person said this and they're still saying this and they might say that in the future. And we kind of start thinking about all these various, conceptualizing it in various ways. And then that is what creates the suffering for us. But really it's just a sound, right? It's just a sound, and if we were able to kind of not have that conceptuality all around it, then it wouldn't really be able to do much to us, right? So for example, if you say one nasty word to someone, right, if you were just not to think about it, right, then actually, it wouldn't register for you, right? But later, you go back to your room and then, that person said this, and wait, hang on a minute, and you start thinking about it suddenly, then you get angry, right? So you really see that the anger really depends upon one's conceptual framework or conceptual workings, rather than just the word, which is just sound. So if you had experience with such things, huh? Maybe like growing up as kids or just with parents or anything like that, and you have kind of these kind of experiences? Whether we're playing with others or we're working, we often have these kinds of experiences, right?
What does this mean? Due to strong attachment to the body, it is harmed by various suffering. Could you please explain it a little bit?
지금 방법들로
가서는 지난게 먼저 가서는라 류를 그 상당해요. 이거는 이내 양쪽에 류를 내가 땅 류를 그래 가서는 먼저 류를 시작해요. 현재에서 아니 수술을 아니 내가 땅 류로 그러나 먼저 파마도 지금 수술 파마에 내게 수술 그거 그거 미신바이 메라나 먼저 류로 아니 결과가 엔들어서 이 파마가 엔들어서 이게 제거가 엔들어서 먼저 류로 아니 내가 그게 나한테 잡고요. 자신 와 땡가 무가서 드라치라 미신바이 메라도 땅 그놈가 가세요. 어다 배우서 얘들은 부자는 와 세상에 되게 가서는 차바도 되고 자신
So it's mainly because, right, so when we think about our body, right, the body itself doesn't think anything, right? So in terms of being kind of insulted or having harsh words spoken towards it, it's only the mind that's creating the harm that comes from those types of words, right? So it's mainly because we have a particular attachment, for example, to ourselves, to this body, and so forth, that when we hear those harsh words, we conceptualize, oh, it's talking about me, and it's like this, it's insulting me, it's like this. Whereas the body, you know, if it's just for the body doesn't think, so it cannot harm the body in any way, right? But it's only because of the attachment of the mind to the body and so forth that those words have some kind of effect on us and can therefore have the power to harm us, right? And we can see that this actually extends beyond us, right? Because if someone also insults our parents or our teachers or even our country or something, right? And something like the country doesn't think, but if based on our attachment to those, right, then those words can harm us, right? Whereas if someone insults someone that we don't like, right, our enemy, then actually that doesn't harm us, right? We kind of like that, yeah? So.
미치지 가지 미치지들이나 미치지들 저희 저거 까먹어도 진짜 잠깐만요 같이 맞아야 됩니다. 나그 여봐야 버래 야봐야 까먹어 미치지들 거라니 미치면 나는 좋아하게 되는 아니 이내 너들도 봐봐 지금 그만에 들었으면 코나카를 마음하고 나는 들을 거다지라 그래서 우리가 차례죠.
So, you know, whenever we think about kind of insults to the body, when somebody calls you fat, or they call you tiny, or they call you whatever, then, you know, that's just how your body is, right? It's not like you can, you know, if you're tiny, it's not like you can change it and suddenly become big, so it's not like something it's just the way that it is. But it's really, so the body itself isn't affected by that, but it's really just because of our attachment to these things and the conceptuality that comes behind it, that then those words have that power to harm us.
다른 쪽에 그러면 내가 사기를 아니 초화단 대비와 무슨 초보선 아니 강사 신발은 가지고 오는 비비 지금 자와는 가는 대비 아니 초화단 대비 강사라서 많이 초화빵 많이 초화 머리가 많이 초화가 빵 먹어라 이래도 아니 미치 저는 이제시원에 같이 들라 control manami so papang borela pena jenda dala so go mission by the round so so maga to cheba inas teni ani trying to konelo ina ani sendana ani sechimala da so bala ani suda divasa bala jenda la ani dala sele chidai kwang mission bidi shran dam lawa ina shran la shu chitu ga yo males ine to dimbitala ani dan chishir 대민들 인데게 가서 처음에 부자라니 수술 부자라니 사람은 가는 거야. 자, 그러니까 부자라니들 나니 가서 가시는 데도 있어. 봐. 이제 그 부자라니 나니는 아니 내가 봐서 좋아하는데 여러 때 대가서 papang dulu. Kada papang dari kolati kalau tangaje lah sudah cici yang biasa. Biji kita si buja tak boleh dulu. Si 사실 거는 그래서 와라체 와 초와단 데비 강사라 아스라 랑기 초 머리가 제가 수 컨트롤하니 비밀을 안 소소 맞아 컨트롤하는 아니 지기만 했어요. 저도
So then the next verse is talking as the Ajahn says, suitable to get angry with people connected with anger. So it's really questioning like our very attitude towards these kind of people. So we may think, oh, it's because others will dislike me, right? So that's why we don't like these kind of people, because we don't like when people dislike us, right? But since it will not devour me either in this life or in another life, why do I not want this? So again, we tend to not like these kind of people. We tend to have an aversion towards people, and we get angry with these people who are kind of angry towards us. But as we just discussed, since it's really a matter of our own way of thinking, that whether the harm is caused to us or not, then it's really about thinking about why do we not want this in the first place? Where is that coming from? And as we saw, it's really coming from this attachment.
And then JB is a term, but like this. Yepan uses in GB, and he particular term, and then Logan Yabala, Dubala Gabala. Yabala said as in the river bed. Yabala and Yabala said on the river as suggested. That is a Yaba Judy Baka. Yaba Judy Baka. That is a Yepan uses in GB. He is a particular strong. Yepan uses Yepan Latin and Genomic and anything on the Yamajai to Ra. And then anybody at Tapata movement, mentioning Jidu, Ra, Jidu, Mevachan, Zol, Jala, and Zolas. Take a particular, not to do that, never a relation with each other, Mariah Seven, as we did the Ponderano. Take a particular, talk, and make Bachi and turn into human. Yes, love. Then I did it. And then you buy it, you beg ranking is in Pachi. That means about a baby and you beg Pachi, she shares the rat. Because it's from Mara, Udo, Kalishira, to Mara, and Pachi, you beg Pachi, Pachi, the last chibi share, get it is the duck, and Menunas, get it, and they is Never Majena, Yaba, but the Yaba is dying in the Mabusto. Chesang also get that under Susan Alas and Yaba, till a Pachichi was the core of the human, yes, even Pachichi, Kate, Munduna, not to the color, put a green goose, and a negative jalad of Yaba or Rajachi, put a Pachichi goose, both in the land. Yes. Daki never Dolma, Dorchi, wrong never saw that little Dorchi, Dibatani, and Temperless. Channel, today is so that you never as Maharai and the Pachichi in the Channel of Magawa, Chiju, yes. The never the Karimu Karin, the good Mutabi, Zolo, yes. Killed the Magavachu, Chiway, Karin, cannot let Diba and Mamusa, the bit of. And people are changing. Right. The Jala Roger, the music, Pachichi, and the room. The Ani, can the room, not way, Cassie, but the Raw in Yambadi musical dollar as it is, Tapatan. Cassie, Yambadi, right, cannot permission for the conference now. Take it, the Basapati, that not a Jewish Manyango, they would need this. Can I do? This is not a Zolo. Nature, the Bassa said, and Josh,
So then the next set of verses is dealing with saying that it's unsuitable to get angry at obstacles to our worldly gain. Right? So as the first outline says, worldly gain quickly disintegrates, and therefore it is unsuitable to get angry at obstacles to that. Right? So we might think, because they will hinder my worldly gain. But even if I do not want this, I will have to leave my worldly gains behind, while my negativities will remain firm. So we do sometimes get into the situation where people become kind of obstacles for us to attain certain things that we want, right? And whether it's money or riches or whatever kind of we think to get. And there are certain people who, act as obstacles or act to harm us in our pursuit of those things. And generally we don't like that, right? We consider them as our enemy. But even if we don't want that, the way to think about it, as it says, is that all of these worldly gains, whether it's money or whatever it is, these are all impermanent phenomena, right? So being impermanent, eventually they will disintegrate, or they will exhaust themselves, they will run out, right? Whereas on the other hand, if we are, in order to protect those things, in order to get those things, we have to get angry and fight with all these people who are these obstacles to getting those, then that anger, which is creating so much of the virtue, that is something that, unlike the riches, that's firm, that's stable, that will continue with us into the future, into future lives. So it's really unsuitable to get angry and create all this non-virtue, which is very stable and firm and continues with us, for the sake of these very impermanent and transitory things that we try to get. So then the next outline says, stopping practices of wrongful gain, wrongful livelihood. So it says, thus it is better that I die today than live a long but harmful life. For even if people like me should live a long time, there will always be the suffering of death. Right? So again, this idea that in order to get these things, if we were to just then go kind of the way of wrong livelihood, right? So there are various types of ways of wrong livelihood, such as getting things through stealing or killing people or any kind of way like that. But if we go that way, then as the previous verse said, these are kind of negativities that stay around with us, and we do it just for the sake of these temporary things. So the idea being that it's better that I die today is kind of like, we sometimes say this, I would rather die than do this and that, right? We kind of sometimes say it like that. So kind of thinking that I would rather die than engage in all these kind of wrong, negative practices of getting these worldly things, because again, even if I do that and I end up living a long time, there's always death that will come and separate me from the things, and there's always that suffering right there. And so, in general, we should always be, careful, right? We're all kind of young, and maybe we have all sorts of different jobs, and we might work in an office or a bank or whatever, and there will always kind of be the opportunity to kind of, maybe steal from people or do something dishonestly or whatever. But we should be very, very careful about that, right? Because actually, it might seem tempting, but in the long run, it's not better to be careful and honest with people. Because if we're careful and honest with others, and it kind of spreads, right? It means that others will also be more likely to be careful and honest, and then as a society can become more careful and honest with each other as people come to rely upon one another. Whereas if people are kind of just always cheating and lying and deceiving one another, then it just creates that kind of atmosphere, right? So in that way, really trying to be careful about not engaging in these various methods of wrong livelihoods for the benefit of getting this worldly gain.
So the factor of impermanence is quite visible in case of body, but I guess in case of money, wealth and worldly gains, although it seriously depends on a few other causes and conditions, but we take care of those causes and conditions, it can be stabilized, as we have seen plenty of examples, people who have got birth in a rich family, and since their deaths they were all rich. And similarly, in case of poor people, they were born in such sort of condition, and So I guess this why this generalization that it's gonna disintegrate, whereas we can see that it can be stabilized if we take care of the causes.
가자 집에 지장 통보라 이내 주로도 지상지 정말 안 되면 주로
So it's simply to do with the properties of functioning things, right? So all these different phenomena that are functioning things, they're in the nature of disintegration, right? And we have this kind of grasping or this idea that things are quite stable and permanent. But on the other hand, we also know that all these phenomena around us, whatever it might be, they're all in this nature of disintegration and change, right? So we have many examples of this in general, right? So we can think that long ago there were very rich people, right? Kings, and they had these massive palaces that they built. But what happened to them today? Right? Most of them are gone or in pieces or things like that. And likewise, we can often think that there are many cases where people are very rich when they're young, but they become older. As they become older, they become poor, or maybe they start poor and they become rich. And so this is a very changeable situation. Although as you say, it does depend on various causes and conditions, in general, these things, all of these kind of items are in the nature of change and disintegration. So even if we take care of them and so forth, it might just happen that we have a cup and it's very nice and we take care of it, but then one day it might break. Or with our money, someone might come and steal it from us. Or and then even if nothing like that overtly happens, even just if it's just left there, things get older, right? They slowly, moment by moment, are disintegrating and getting older. In fact, also with our body, with ourselves, it's actually a process that starts from the very moment we are born. We start to get older, we start to, in a sense, disintegrate. And so, despite this, we kind of have this idea of things being very stable, very lasting. And we have the kind of book here, and it looks like, okay, the book is here now, and it was here yesterday, it's going to be here tomorrow. And so there is this thing also for us. Our body was we had it yesterday, we had it a few weeks ago, it's still here now. So we do tend to have this strong sense of things being permanent, but actually they're always changing moment by moment, and eventually will kind of exhaust themselves or disintegrate. And also for us, all of us sitting in this room, most of us look to be about in our 20s, some of us. Then we can estimate, right, that in the very we can estimate that maybe in like 80 odd years, right, none of us will be alive, right? Don't wish that, but none of us will not be here. But on the other hand, right now we're thinking, well, I don't have any kind of sicknesses. I'm very healthy. The body is good. We have a nice place to live, and we have all these conditions around us that are supporting our life. But that can all change, and that will eventually end up changing regardless of what we do, right? And we never know when we're going to die. There can be motor accidents. There can be all sorts of different things that kind of act as obstacles to our life. So although we have this sense of permanence, it's really not something that we can truly know about.
dalla magawa ci gubernur mas ne ma so ci zoji ja asla se to ne ta ma to ci mi da ba ma da to lo ne mo cha be so jo ta mo ra anda ba se ne ki kare na wo de to ta na so di la se de ro ci ma ni ma ci ke mo cha le ni ga ne kala da ma shi ro ni ne so se ne shu ci ne no ke mo dile na to i bi ta ma di ka ju de ge no ta wo ma de dile ne ja ko tu mo ci ra ni sa ma la ci ke ta mo da ja ci 아니 정보체 아니 kalora ya harjene ya bochin dioi ifidere ba di join asu diba di so ile diba masa asu diwa sa ni Geshema ya de do de jo ni ba asu chilun da me khaje kai dai le de che do la da mu yo ba asu kare de na de da duo ma je ya bochin de be ki chim.
So we have a verse from Shantideva actually. I don't know if it was already come or it will come up later, but it says that if there is something that can be done to change it, what is the use of worrying about it? But if there is nothing to be done to change it, then again, what is the use of being unhappy about it? Right? And so there are a lot of things where we have no power to change them. Right? So, for example, we're all going to die, and we might have a lot of worry about that, like, oh, I'm going to die, I'm going to leave this world and separated from my friends and my family and all these kind of things. And so we may have a lot of worry and stuff about that. But actually, we don't really have any kind of power to change that. We don't even know when it's going to happen. We don't have any kind of power to change that. So, okay, if we're sick, we go to the hospital and we can do certain things, but at the end of the day, we have very limited power over that. So then, since there's nothing we can really do to change it, there's really no point in worrying about that. Worrying on top of that, just kind of worrying and thinking about it and making it ourselves unhappy about it, serves absolutely no purpose, right? So we're all getting older and none of us can then do anything to change it. So again, just sort of worrying about it doesn't really serve any purpose. So on the other hand, although we don't know how long we have, we can really try to utilize that time as best we can. So being very nice and kind to others, doing whatever work or kind of the things we aspire to as best as we can, be engaging in virtuous activities, abandoning non-virtuous activities, and really try our best in that way.
먼저 이게만 제시해 주기도 공로나 오늘 야고치 같이 일상만 게 준비를 상담해야 되는 게 부지는 그거 돼요. 그래서 이게 막 같이 중에 뭔가 되게 중수 사이에 이런 단계로 우리가 준비를 위주로 먼저 믿어. 그래서 상담하고 쉬우쉬우로 되게 신체적으로 되는 분들이라 가서는 그 준비를 위주로 시작하고
And likewise, if we think that everything we are experiencing now, we tend to think about it being so serious and like the cause of so much worry and anxiety and all these different things. But all of these things, in a certain amount of time, will just become an object of memory, right? So if we think about the life that we've had already, then all of the things that happened, it now just become memory, right? There's something that exists in memory. And so likewise, the things that are happening to us right now will kind of become simply memory. So as opposed to being this very fixed, stable thing that we think about them in the present moment, but rather they're just kind of things that are transitory and again will just become something, a part of our memory at one point.
지난번에도 미치가 리베 자체에서 나오는 미치스니도 다다랑 베게 전부다. 지난번에 자가 기억을 했었는데 네 우리 그냥 상하고 다다디 하고 제가 저에는 리더 네 말씀하는 뭐 벌써 슈슈 뭐 당고야입니다. 당장 뭐 맞아야 되는 거지 저에는 네게 너도 되게 많이 디바사이 뭐 아니 기다리게 가서 내가 같이는 대배 위치하고 그런 말한테 가서로 소 저와 주내지 그래서 sama 다리 가서 상다야 얘기도 쳐요. 아니 가서 남들이 제가 있네. 다리 가서 되는 소야 가서 되는 담을 해야 가는 말이야. 산이나 상다야 가서 내리지 제가 대배 위치하는다. 제가 예 제시하기 수 대배 위치하고는 마음발 되는데 그 상을 거야 주지는 거지. 저한테 제가 나서 빨리 둘이 잡아요 봐. 근데 단단한 말하면서 미치 세계를 까먹으려는 거야.
So then it's going to be advice of many, also the Indian masters, that it's really important not to think too much about the past and the future, right? So when we're right now in the present, then doing the best we can in the present moment to enact, whatever it is that we're doing, to do it to our best capability, right? Because again, for everything that we're doing right now will just kind of fade away into memory, right? So even right now we're all sitting here in the class, but tomorrow we'll be thinking, oh, yesterday we were all sitting here in the class, right? It will just become something that we remember. But likewise, when we think about the future, then although the future now seems something in front of us, that too will at one point become something that will be just a memory. So rather than spending too much time thinking about the past and the future, we're really just focusing on the present and doing the best that we can with whatever it is that we're doing. So now if you have any questions, please feel free to ask.
So we talked last class about when other person is, we shouldn't be angry on other person because it's because of causes and conditions, like the way he acts. But I wonder if it's not like not giving respect to the abilities of a person to choose to be a better person. So we did talk about like people who try to practice and try to be better, but it's like I feel that we can give I forgot the word. Like giving like giving respect or the right place to person to you understand what I mean? Like credit. This is the word. Giving credit to people so they actually know what they are doing and they are responsible for themselves. And even if they make mistakes, then it's fine, and we should be compassionate about it, but also like giving respect to someone is to understand he has the ability to choose, and not just saying, okay, it's the causes and conditions, and he doesn't control it, so I shouldn't be angry.
You can attend Raman this Yes, only the rest of the Gonpa Yomore dice nativi.
Allora, quando ti chiamano a fare non vanno a casa di la funzione che chiamate, devi 가르쳐서 사람들이 가르친다고 하는 거. 이 공부만 해도 되는데 인생에 묻어서 하셔야 돼. 그렇게 지도만 하면 공부 빠지면 자, 미리 사람 가잖아. 내가 코로나 해야 돼. 카이만 해도. 자, 카이만 하는 모든 사람이 아니 지고 그때 계획만 하는 것이 또 코로나 개부지 지도만 해. 통일되는 안. 근데 되네. 네, 이제
그거 하면 더 kenzo를 애들 가다들 뭐 크레딧 말해도 됐어요. 이제 한 얘기하느라 나고 나오다. 단나라 소공치되어 단이 안에 소공치도 상도당도 소공치 나오는 인제다 부리다 되자신 주동 팀무 말게 라운진지 인터넷 대두기 시황성시 부분도 서버에서니 샤샤저를 인지도 된들을 좀지 통중적으로 채는 크레딧 받아 콜에 이제 말하시지 크레딧 제저로 그러고 되주시는 라마 미교를 수 있는지 초진 또 사무를 계시는 게 싫어. 초진 상황 만중에 따라 소공 시우신이 파주들다 라마 요말에 다 같이 되는 초신 빠졌다는 다비야 미신 빠져도 갈로 라마 요말에 난 춘주도 지자교로 이게 이제 파주들 크레딧도 베게든 파주
쿠셔죠. 또 동동도
여기 있을
다이네 그게 이거 장수해 줘.
고분한 신이 저는
기존에 거긴 게 다, 저거 왜 맞은 샤샤인데라. 저는 그거는 부재로 실행 해요 샤. 사니공간에 이제 거기다 가서 그거도 이제 이제 코로나 들어와. 근데 지금 나도 கொஞ்சம் மா치 이러는데.
I think you should join your questions, make it more clear.
No, it's a translation issue, right? It's my response. Come pensate, dus generale, di mi sempre o come
근데 계시면 그걸 통째로 잘.
구분하시는
네.
제가 리딩 해줘 얘기하면 mi sempre 구분하시는 그 generale 사고방나 같은 거.
아니, 네 너도 이미들 파이다 돈이 제일 많다. 그러나 많이 듣고 싶어와. 단점만 지금 가는 생각도 들어요. 와. 딱 얘기 최대 달아서 최대 돈이 다니는 거. 최대 카요 말이에요. 가는 최대로 벌어 잡으러 가요. 유사시나 무슨. 와. 저기 생각도 나고 하는 거 되는 거에 수수는 그런 애들이라고. 유사가 공부도 맞아요. 이게 아무리스 다들 미두자마는 나도 가서 되게 먼저 커피하고 다른 거 대신에 소리를 근데 뭐다 세상에 표현을 많아지 기술도 나고 그런 게 아니 공부로서 받아야 너무 미쳐서 그도 너무 많아 그거 혹시 저기 보시 싶은 거 같은데 다음에 전주시 들리신 되게 많아요.
Yes, it's not really about looking down at the other person or kind of thinking less of them in some way, but rather recognizing that it's not really up to them to get angry. It's not something that they choose to get angry. It's something that comes together through causes and conditions. Like we don't have any choice about that. And so when someone is angry at us and talking angry at us, and we're thinking, oh well, it's not really them. It's their anger, right? And so maybe we even think, oh, usually this person is really nice, but right now they're behaving really poorly, and thinking that there's something behind that, right? There is something that is creating that, which is their anger, attachment, and so forth. And so it's not really about looking down on them or thinking less of them in some way, but understanding where that is coming from, in the sense of what's creating that for them.
Is your question?
Is it clear?
It's not a question.
I just wanted to say that, okay, we don't look down, but still, we are here because we want to practice to be better to other people. And when I do something wrong, then I know I have to practice more and I have responsibility to be better in the other time. So if I look at someone and just say, okay, I talk to myself and say, yes, you have the causes and conditions, but still you were wrong. And you have to practice and to be a better person. And I don't say it about the other person. I just say, okay, I understand. But it's like, we all have responsibility for our acts and reactions. So saying it's fine, it's just like not believing in the opportunity to change things, that people can change themselves.
So you ask, who you did it, is a regular meeting, another Singapore Harsila, and get you about another session, maybe down ocean.
So now I'm going to talk to you about a mission, but the only TRS, sometimes, and then Magyana, and also Haku, you neutrally Haku, or Suzuki Haku.
Then the German, the Kunga Singapore, and you actually came in Mother Shara. So the mission by a home.
Commission, but the Suzuki.
Some of the China, and Mission by the Yagi China came out, Mission by the China to home.
Meaning,
I didn't know, I shall and he came and Shasha.
and it's just this channel, and then,
And I didn't try to show how
to come to the Yamenche to be
there. Is he crying for the music, but there was a watching the land to Jimmy Kundo, and I needed to do that. Showing the home to us. I need this money in the case of what you will. Then other came those can be simple and Majala advance the shadow Koran to her. I did it in the rules and can't make it higher than Zina, Maduro. And getting a budget, I can't take it to the doors. Did get Shania home like that. The child trees. With the Luna, we do the eye. Luna did the child like Mamma, trying to come with Chamoyan, but to the Luna. I know my shield. Itu kalau kita ini juga dia umada, lagi kalau jangan sampai tahu, kalau jadi orang mungkin dan ya, kita terus
And so it's not that we just excuse people the mistakes that they make, but again we have to be very skillful in the way that we communicate that to the other person, right? So the main point of the practice in this occasion is not to just get angry and then respond with anger to them. Because if we do that, then they get angry and we get angry at them, and then the whole situation is lost, as it were. But that's not. So the point of the practice in thinking like this is that we don't get angry, but it doesn't mean that we can't speak to them and show them what they did wrong. But we have to be quite skillful in how we do this, right? So you'd have to say, hopefully when we're not angry, say it nicely to them. You say, look, you did this, and it's not a very nice way to talk to people, and so on and so forth. So it's not about, you can still show people what they did wrong, but the point of the meditation and thinking about the causes and conditions and so forth is not to ourselves respond with anger, right? So showing the person their fault doesn't depend upon us getting angry, right? In fact, that's probably not great to do that, right? But so it's not about showing them their fault or not, it's about ourselves not getting angry at that time, which would make things work. So yeah, it happens sometimes, even with friends, friends get into a fight and then, get into a disagreement and then, things kind of get out of hand. But if in that moment, this person's angry and that person's angry and we're both angry and you try to kind of tell the other person what they did wrong, that's not going to be very well heard, right? It's not going to be very well accepted. So it's much better if ideally if both people are kind of calm and collected and we can have a proper conversation about it, about who did what in what way, right? So it's really about that factor of anger. We see this in many different scenarios, like a teacher with their students, or working in an office, or various different times. Right? Wherever we go, we have to interact with people. So it's really best to interact in a nice way. So the point is to not get angry about these kind of things. Because if we get angry or we try to communicate these things, it's not going to be well heard. If the other person's angry and we're angry, then it's not going to be properly communicated. Whereas if we're able to kind of keep a level head and know how to communicate it properly, then that's maybe going to have some benefit.
Which way?
I was wondering if you could explain a bit more about, in verse 47, it talks about how others, by being instigated by my own actions, is it like really kind of a condition that can allow the negative seeds in there continuing to ripen? Is that sort of how it works?
And then one more Yeah, so it is just that it arises due to many different types of causes and conditions, right? So it's not just that we're just with one cause and it's us that's causing them to get angry. It's that it comes into being in dependence on so many different causes and conditions. So in this case, when it's talking about our karma being kind of impelling them in that way, it's just talking about, so for example, if you get angry at me, then there's because that's acting as a condition which was created between us due to some kind of previous life connection that we have. But it's, we shouldn't think about it too narrowly in the sense of just there being one cause, but there's always a variety of causes and conditions. So if you put a seed in the field, it's not just the seed that you need, you also need the earth and the sunlight and the water and all sorts of various other conditions to go around it. So here it's talking about that. And one of those conditions is that previous life connection that would, some kind of connection leading to that, what arises right now.
얘기 안 해가지고 뭐라도 때문에 까마차야 나가차야 change the year. 이내다 걔 말하다 좀 한번 얘기 지리에서 해대 보상다리 수수깡이 비누도. 봐. 그지? 뒤집어서는 막 나 가르치는 거 거는 뭐 무슨 거 나라 애들 가지고 뒤집어서는 거 눈에 지나니까 까마라고 가르쳐와서 나와 눈에 지 이거는 또 왜 저래요. 봐. 이렇게 대만이야 뭐가 이거 사이들이 뒤집어서 다 쇼래로 아사모 제스처 상주선 것도 상담하는 그리가 나의 미신과 참말은 나로 나보니 가사지로 무슨 참에게 나서기 보디 이 추고 쇼선 인베드가 텔레스는 사야나 수수는서 주니셔 제정 아니면 또 소소래야 되는
So what's the benefit of thinking in this way really is that, you know, whenever we experience some kind of suffering, if someone's getting angry at us, then we often have a lot of thinking about, oh, why are they doing this? Why is this happening? And so on and so forth. So then it's just a very helpful way to think. So now whether, you know, you as the person in this example who's getting angry, then whether it benefits you or not, then you don't really know, right? But in terms of ourselves, then it definitely has a lot of benefit for ourselves in answering these kind of questions. Oh, why is it happening? Why is it like this? Thinking, well, because there's some kind of previous life connection, that we created some kind of, we did something in the previous life that has led us down to what is happening right now. And so it can be very helpful definitely for oneself. And similarly, thinking about this in terms of other types of sufferings that we experience, like if we get sick, or if we're in an accident or any kind of suffering, then thinking, you know, sometimes we're like, oh, I never get sick, or it doesn't happen to me, and this kind of thinking is not really useful. Whereas if you think, well, it's something to do with something that was in the previous life, and now it's led me down to what I'm experiencing right now, it can be much more beneficial way of thinking that can kind of not lead us down this very unhelpful ways of thinking, this over-conceptualizing, right? So in that way, it definitely has a benefit for ourselves. And on top of that, so the Bodhisattvas will take it one step further by thinking, you know, for example, with the sickness, they can think that not only is this one bit of coming from a previous karma that I created, but also by my experiencing the suffering, may I be able to take away the sickness of all sentient beings from myself. So I can experience it instead of them. Right? So again, it's just different ways of thinking that can be very helpful when we're experiencing these various types of suffering.
Just now we talked about the lower realms, about the hell realm and all. So I guess if we do any task with a positive motivation, it will bring us to the higher realms, and also it will make positive imprints on our mind. And if we do any negative karma, it will bring on more afflictions. It will eventually lead us to the lower realms. So I guess this concept of enlightenment, which comes from the seed of wisdom of emptiness. So if there is emptiness, how can there be things with, why is this concept of Bodhisattva so strong? If there is a wisdom of emptiness, if nothing exists, or why is the need to do the positive also? Why is the need of doing positive also? Why is there this need of generating Bodhisattva if the enlightened being or the enlightened being has this wisdom of emptiness? So why is this concept of Bodhisattva so prominent, whereas the main goal, which is of enlightenment, it somewhere dwells with the concept of neutrality and stability, neutrality.
And if you found the songs, the girls are
똥바지 떠야 되는 거래.
그래서 똥바지 떠야 돼. 소라고 그래. 아니 똥바지 떠는 사람이 약간 그래. 약간 있나네.
왜 있는 사람들이 이런 거
말 가르치는 게 배웠어. 그래. 가르치는 점이 비슷한 게 그래. 이 이렇게 샤워 취해야 돼. 또 처음에 또
그들로 충분히 똥바를 지나서 똥바이 인상 그래 여자고 해서 우리 지역에 되는 거 근데 똥바를 좀 들래. 그래도 자.
저는 상계가 비소지 똥바를 또 비소는
돈이도 비실을 되게 인지 봐라. 나는 돈이도 비실을 똥바지도 상계 인지 비실 비치네요. 비치네요. 인도 비실을 되는 우리랑은 비실아. 그다음에 돈이도 비실을 되니까 이걸 길래 있었어. 돈이를 때서 저기 아까도 내가 그거다. 저도 좀 어떤 말을 해. 근데 일단 사제에 대해 요만 똑바로 들어온다.
이 사람들 뭐만 들었어. 땀 똥바를.
똥바를. 이렇게 똥바다에 가서 달리는 거.
그래, 무슨 땀 똥바이나 가르치는 점도 비슷한 게 가르치는 미션을 배우는 거를 소개. 그것도 양 똥바를.
네. 이거는 똥바만 되고 지금 뭐를 좀 강의 주는 거야. 제가 똥바를 되거나 저기 똥바를 치 가면 똥바를 하는 거. 가서 도와. 가서 내도 용이도 도와. 근데 가서 다시 시키는 거 똥바를 다른 세들 다 엄마를 거는 거 하는 거야. 그냥 나 뒤에 배는 나오면 아빠들이 똥바들이 그래서 내가 그 시간에 하는 얘기만 대박 주고 싶은 거야. 이내야 나도 가야 두려야 되게 좋아하는 게 가지도 와. 그래서 되게 싫은 거죠. 아니 나 그냥 많이 와시고 그냥 대박 주고 배도 빡빡 때문에 좋아지게 돼. 되게 다가 아니 똥똥 많이 되지요. 근데 보통 말하는 거 그래도 탄이 돼야 봐. 또 써있는 게 봐. 그래서 저기 가서 똥바를 주고 사실 얘가 똥바도 잘 들리고 그러다. 그게 많았어. 그래서 탄이 되게 받아. 변동을 내봐야 생이 이거가 너는 빼먹고 채 가야만 가고 그래서 똥바를 내 기대에 기대다.
So this is quite a difficult point, right? And it's something that even a lot of us get confusing because it's a very subtle point. But really it's about understanding that when we're talking about emptiness, it's not meaning that things don't exist, right? Just because things are empty doesn't mean that they don't exist. So it's talking about a particular way in which they don't exist. They are empty of something. But also for us, you do this analysis of searching for the self, and you think it's not the arm, it's not the hair, it's not this, it's not that, and you don't find this person or the self existing from its own side. And so a lot of people think, well, then that means there's no self altogether, it doesn't exist, instead all things don't exist. But it's really not like that. It's just that this permanent, unitary, solid self that is this ultimately, that doesn't exist. But there is a conventionally existing self, and there is a conventionally existing self and others, and so on and so forth. So it still makes sense to work for ourselves and for the benefit of others. But it's just understanding that emptiness doesn't mean complete non-existence. Yes, so in a sense also if we just think that empty just means non-existent, and also example if we think like once we die we just become completely non-existent, and actually all of this will become very pointless, right? There would be no need to kind of think about practicing and trying to attain better rebirths and trying to attain enlightenment, because it doesn't really matter, it just becomes non-existence, and what's the point? So it's a very kind of important thing to